Well, good morning, my friends. Are you ready for this? I don't know if I am. This has been a tough week for me. Oh my gosh. I just got back Sunday from Mountain View, which that was a good time. We had a great time down there. Very hot, but we had a good time, and we'll even show you a clip or two that we brought back from there. And my good buddy Bruce down there in Mississippi, Bruce Robinson, he filmed a couple of clips on his iPhone. So I brought a couple of those with me here that we'll play this morning. But I have a number of things to talk about this morning, but no real big one subject. I'm going to show a few very specialized tools again. You've seen them before, but I don't think it ever hurts to go through them again, and I'll try to give you a little close-up and talk to you about those tools a little bit. As always, if we have time, we'll take questions and answers at the end. And I just remind everybody to put a question mark or maybe even 2 question marks at the beginning of your question. That helps me find it because they scroll up the screen and they're very small print. So it's hard to see them because they go by really quick. So put a couple of question marks at the beginning and that'll help us. We just passed, well, I don't know that we just passed, but we were right at 64,000 subscribers as I turned on the PC just a few minutes ago. So, I think it was 63,999 actually. So I would say we're at 64,000 subscribers with that. So thank y'all for subscribing. If you're new to the channel, I thank you for joining up, and I hope you'll find something here that you'll enjoy. As a matter of fact, I've got a couple of comments here. I've got a bunch of random comments that I've written down that are asked over and over and over, and I'm going to run through those really quickly and talk about those too in just a minute. But the first thing we're going to do is talk about a few gifts that we got. Just got this one yesterday. This is from well, I just have initial C and Wargum, and I knew he was sending this. He had sent me an email. It's on Celtic Art. And I say he, I don't know for sure because it was an email whether it was a he or a she, but I do appreciate it very much, on Celtic Art. And I know you can't really see this very well, but just give you some idea, there's just art all through the whole book. Just about any page you turn it on, it's got something to do with the Celtic art. And if you're wondering why I would get a book on Celtic art, well, the 12 string was decorated in the Celtic, tradition, I guess you'd say. We used a Celtic Trinity symbol on the for the position markers on the dots there, where they would normally be just pearl dots or whatever. So, by the way, I'll show you the 12 string up close again here, and I'll show you a little bit of just a very minor amount of progress that I've made on the last Hurrah guitar. Just been crazy busy. I'll show you a little bit on that guitar there, and these are some of the specialty tools that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Let's see. The next thing is I've got a clip, a short video clip here on a couple of more gifts, so let's take a look at that. Just wanted to show you a gift I received from Mr. John Hanson, and if I remember right, this is not the first thing he sent. It seems to me like I've seen his name a couple of times. Or at least I've seen it in comments or somewhere. So John, thank you very much for this gift. And you might be asking, what is that? Well, it's a load of fingerboards for violins, ebony fingerboards. And how many did he send? Well, I believe if I counted correctly, there's 15 of them. Now, in my last 40 years of doing this, or almost 40 years actually, I don't recall ever doing 15 in all that time. So I'm pretty sure this is a lifetime supply. So this is wonderful to have. There are many, many occasions where it will work out and to replace them. He said he saw me reusing the white ones that were on mini fiddles and then dyeing them black. There is a reason I do that and will continue to do that, and that is that most of those kinds of fiddles are sentimental. Somebody's great-grandfather played on it, or etc. Father, grandfather, whatever. And therefore, I try to keep them as original as possible. Most of the time we don't replace parts unless we absolutely have to on those sentimental type repairs. So that's why you see me doing that most of the time. Anytime I need to replace a part like that, I always replace it with ebony, or at least a higher quality than what's on it, for sure. So, I think I'm good. Thank you, John. I really do appreciate it. This is very, very helpful. We will definitely put them to good use. I'm not sure I'll use all of them, though. And by the way, John says that he knows some Amish folks, and he's going to see if he can't get me some deer antler, too. So, thank you so very, very much, John. We really do appreciate it. All the support is so very helpful. I want to say a big thank you to Steve Paulos from Ottumwa, Iowa. He sent a large box of antler. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of them in here. I don't know how many, but I would say about 8 or so, looks like, of pieces like this. And by the way, this is the way I prefer to receive them. If the skull is still attached, if you just saw right down the skull like that, that's the easiest saw, by the way, for you too. It's easier than cutting through this big thing. And that saves the strength down in this area, and you know, that just gives us that much more length that we can use. And on those little antler saddles, every little bit of length is always a good thing. And of course, some of them are sheds and things like this, and there's nothing you can do about those. Those are just the way they are. So I appreciate it very, very much, Steve. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate receiving these kinds of things, because this is what keeps me in business. If I wasn't able to get the antler, well, then I couldn't sell them to you guys, and I'd be out of business. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. So, thank you to all who have sent those gifts over the last couple of weeks. It's been 2 weeks, of course, since we had the last shop talk, because I was down in Mountain View last weekend. And I'm going to, like I said, I've got a clip on that here. We'll show you that in just a moment. But first, let's talk about what's happened even kind of since then, and that is the release of the videos, especially with Emery singing her part. Oh my gosh, has that gone over? I knew it would, you know, and the cool thing about it is those last 2 videos, the part 12 of the 12 string, and then the one with the vocals with Emery singing, and of course I sang too, but mine was, in hindsight, I wish I wouldn't even have put mine on there, to be perfectly honest with you. I just kind of wish I'd have left mine off. That would have been a smart thing to do. But anyway, those 2 videos have had over 22,000 views combined just in a few days now. So that's really, really special for us. We appreciate that. So many of the comments. I mean, like 1 in 3 just about said it brought them to tears to hear her sing like that. Yeah, you know what? I got to reveal something here. When I was standing over just kind of off camera there, trying not to, because Emery gets nervous in front of folks these days. She hasn't done it in quite a while. We used to play on stage a lot, but she really hasn't played or sang in a long time. She's raised 3 kids, and you know, she just kind of took a break while she was doing that. And anyway, what I wanted to reveal to you is it was bringing me to tears. I was fighting them, boy. I could tell when I heard her sing it. I thought, oh my gosh, this is so good. If you could have just heard it live, you wouldn't have believed it. It was really that good. And she was apologizing all over the place. Well, I wish I could have done this, or I wish I could. I said, it was perfect. Don't worry about it. It was perfect. So it was really good. I was so pleased. And so many people have asked, well, will there be more Emery singing and vocals and things? And time will only tell. Of course, I will encourage it, but I don't know if we'll get a lot more or not. But we probably will. You know, if I just had time, and that's my one commodity I just don't have much of, I'd have my new recording studio put up in my house, and you know, I moved it from where the rental retreat is. It used to be in the lower level of the rental retreat, and I moved my recording studio equipment up to my house. And I have a large area in that house that we could build a new studio, and I just haven't had time to look at it. And if I do that, then I'm sure we'll get more Emery and even the band and etc. Just don't know if that will happen or when it will happen. Let's see. I have a number of miscellaneous type questions here. But I'll tell you what, before we get to that, I think so I don't forget, let's just go ahead and show the Mountain View clips, and we'll show those right now. So these are not real long, and you know, our mission down there is to just have fun and play music and stuff, so we didn't set up a lot of cameras or anything, and Bruce was kind enough to just stop playing and set his instrument down and pick up his iPhone and film a few clips. Now, most of these, as a matter of fact, all of the clips kind of come in mid-song, so don't expect too much, but I think you'll enjoy hearing a little bit of what we had to do down there, or of the fun we had down there, I should say. So here it is.
Everybody knows we wasted all these years, and long ago they said we'd have to set you free, and the whole world knew the small exception of me, the small exception of me. The world is wide, with the small exception of me, there's no surprise. Ain't it funny how that I could be so blind? Funny when it's out of sight, it's out of mind. But now the truth has dawned, it's plain enough to see that the whole world knew the small exception of me. Yes, the whole world knew the small exception of me.
Well, a big thank you to Bruce for filming those clips. Thanks a lot, buddy. Bruce, if you don't know, was, you know, we were we only met on YouTube basically, and then he sent me his Kentucky mandolin to put that new top on. I built the top for his mandolin. He did not have a top. He actually bought the Kentucky mandolin topless, if you will. He bought it from a friend that just had it hanging in his shop, and you know, he didn't give that much for it, and he sent it up to me, and I built a top for it, and then later straightened out the neck on it. And those videos on that, so you can check those out if you're interested. You could just type in RSW and Kentucky mandolins, and I'm sure you can find it. So again, thanks Bruce for you know, coming up there and filming those clips for us. Like I said, Bruce and I then became friends after that, and you know, it's just he's a nice fella, and I really enjoy his company. Okay, while that was playing, I was noticing some questions scrolling up the screen. Now, actually, I'm not ready for the questions yet, but I've made little notes here and things to hopefully address those questions. One of them I just see right now is, have I been vaccinated? And the answer is yes, and it hasn't affected a thing. I don't think it's going to bother me at all. I don't know about you, but it's just, I'm fine. Now, I had both vaccinations. Moderna, I think, is the one I had. And the first one, well, both of them made my arm sore, but neither one of them really gave me any side effects. I think the first one I had a headache. You know, not a real bad headache, just a headache. And after the second one, I didn't feel anything. As a matter of fact, I didn't even feel the shot. I mean, that second one went in so easy. I'm not sure they pumped anything in there. It really didn't hurt at all. So if you would, on your questions, hold those for a little bit yet. Okay, so I think before I go into this stuff here on the table, I'm going to go through some of these miscellaneous questions that just come up over and over and over. I see them in the comments all the time. Well, the first one was, will there be more emery? And we've already talked about that, and perhaps, I hope so. Why don't I use, you know, XYZ kind of finish? Well, I do what I do partly because of familiarity, for one thing, and partly because I know it's tried and true and it's tested, and I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I don't use certain finishes because of certain reasons. You know, a finish has to be acoustically good. You know, yes, I can use different finishes that would fill the pores, but what would it do to the acoustics? You know, I want a finish that vibrates well, and a good finish that vibrates well gets hard and not rubbery, you know, those kinds of things. So that's why I do what I do. I've really only used, well, I technically used 3 finishes in my career, but really 2 finishes. One of them is the nitrocellulose lacquer, which is tried and true, and the other one is the oil varnishes. Now, presently, I'm using True Oil gunstock varnish, because I just can't get the old violin varnishes that I used to get. I don't know what's happened to them, but I cannot find them anywhere. There was Hidersine, I believe, Hidersine, oil varnish. I used to use that all the time. It's very good stuff, but can't get it anymore. So I've gone to the True Oil. Why don't I use a certain, same question with the sealers and the fillers. You know, we've talked about this on many, many videos. I know a lot of these folks are new and they just ask these questions because it's the first one they've seen. But, you know, I have tried every filler there is except for epoxy fillers, and me and epoxy just don't get along, period. I can't find a thing that I would use epoxy for other than filling a hole. And therefore you would say, why don't you use it to fill the pore holes on the guitar? It's what it does to the sound. I realize there's lots of manufacturers out there that use epoxy finishes and stuff, but it's just not going to happen with me. Sorry. So, you know, I just haven't found a sealer or filler that does what it says it's supposed to do. And I've actually worked with the heads of these companies. So it's not like I don't know what I'm doing or don't know the proper procedure or whatever. It's just that you have to apply them and reapply them and apply them again and apply them again and sand them and sand them and sand them. I have to do the same thing with the finish. So why not just use the finish? Then I don't have to have all that other crud in there. And the one finish, I think that the one sealer that did actually work turned that Paduke like a melon color. I mean, like a like a cantaloupe color. It just looked horrible. I mean, it just, so forget it. Why don't I use dogwood? Because it's the only thing he had that shut down his, I think he said shredder or something, or I forget what he said now, but it shut down a piece of equipment because it's that hard. Well, dogwood would be okay to use for instruments on a lot of cases, I think. Probably make great fretboards. But the problem is most dogwood trees, at least in Missouri, are only about this big around. So, you know, you just can't do much with that. I'm sure they get bigger, but not around here anyway. What does my guitar cost? Well, that's kind of a moot point at this point because I don't plan to take any more custom orders for guitars or mandolins, mostly just due to the hand issues. I've got a little bit of time left to build a few more instruments, and if I build a few more, they're probably going to be for me. And you will probably see a few more builds, but not very many, I don't think. But if, just to answer the question though, he said, what do they cost? They were in the neighborhood of $6,000 to $7,500. $6,000 to $7,500. Why don't I use XYZ for sanding, you know, like Scotch-Brite or these kinds of sanding blocks or whatever? You know, there's a million ways to do everything. And I don't have any problem with sanding. The sanding, you know, people, they see me sanding so much and they think that that's the problem. That's not the problem. Sanding is easy. I don't have any real problem with sanding. It's the filling, the doggone pores in the Paduk. Now, you know, I was just comparing, you know, honestly, I don't build guitars out of rosewood, but this last Hurrah guitar is going to be rosewood back and sides. The pores on that look pretty small compared to the Paduk. So you say, well, why do you use the Paduk? It's the superior acoustics. You can pick up a piece of Paduk and tap it, and it rings better than any other hardwood I've ever seen. You know, I've compared a lot of them, and Paduk is just as good as any of the best, or better. So I think it rings better than rosewood myself. So that's why I use Paduk. I don't care if it, you know, takes a lot more work to fill the pores, and I'll complain about it, but it's the best wood. So I'm trying to use the very best quality stuff I can find to build the instrument out of. In my opinion, that's what I think I see a lot of new builders do, and I think it's their biggest fault, is they'll just pick any kind of wood and just build a guitar. If you're going to go to all that trouble to build it, pick good stuff. You know, I mean, there's no point in building it with a board that you find at the hardware store, unless it just happens to be a really good board that you find at the hardware store. And you can find that one occasional board, as I told you in that one of my shop talks, I told you about finding that $1.50 board that made the loudest mandolin I've ever built. So, you know, the point is you should use good quality material and know how to pick it out. And like I mentioned in that other shop talk, you learn how to tap on it and listen to the tone. And if it doesn't have a sustained tone, then I probably wouldn't build a guitar out of it. Okay, another question or two here. Let's see. This was just a one-off question that I saw. It says, why don't I take that, you know, guitar or whatever, or that neck to a machine shop and have them mill a slot in it? Take it to a local machinist, he says. I am a local machinist. I've got a machine shop right next door. If I thought milling it with a milling machine was the best way to handle it, I'd have done that. You know, it's not the best way to handle it. So anyway, just thought that one was kind of funny, actually. Is Caleb my grandson? Now we are slipping down into the dark depths here. No, Caleb is no relation to me at all. He's from the Kansas City area. I hired him on a video that he submitted. So I knew not Caleb until he walked through the doors here. This one is just a real common question that comes up in the comments all the time, and that is, can I send you XYZ to work on? Could you make me XYZ? In other words, could you make me a nut or a saddle or whatever? If I sent it to you, could you make me a pick guard? Could you make me this or that? Or could I send you this, fiddle or this guitar or whatever? And the answer is, first, there's a couple of answers to that. One of them is we're really not accepting anything shipped in at the moment. We've got plenty to work on as it is right now, plenty to keep both of us busy. In fact, I can't even hardly work in here right now because I got so much other stuff to do. So we've got more than we can handle, so we're not really accepting anything shipped in at the moment. The other side of that is, why don't I build all these trinket things for folks, in other words, nuts, saddles, etc. I got more than I can say grace over as it is. I don't need those extra lines of business right now. And that's just the bottom line truth. I'm only one person and I can't handle it. I would love to be able to help everybody out and do all that. I really would. In fact, I used to do it. But now that it's gotten so blown out of proportion, I can't do that anymore. And so that's the answer to both of those. It's just, I'm only one person. I just don't have time. People have, Jason, as a matter of fact, a buddy of mine over in Ireland that's called me quite a few times, and we've talked on the phone quite a few times. He asked me if I couldn't make him a custom pick guard, like on the 12 string. And I can't do it. It would be a great line of business. I'm sure I could sell 1 million of them, but I just can't handle it. One last question. I thought this one it's just a one-off question, but I just thought it was kind of cool. Regarding the series on chocolate, and the question was rhetorical, and it says, do you think she was grateful? And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, if you're new, I suggest you type in RSW chocolate in the YouTube search and watch the series on chocolate. I think you'll enjoy it. Let's see. Let's talk about the stuff here on the table, and then I'll get to the rest of this on the thing. First of all, someone asked in the comments a moment ago, I saw it scroll up the screen, about what's the current status of the PC. Well, I've ordered a cooler based on everybody's recommendations. This is one of the kind of standard coolers that are available that's affordable. I didn't want to spend $150, $200 on a cooler for this old PC. So this one was like in the $40 range, and it has very, very good ratings. So I went ahead and bought this one, and I'm going to put this in eventually. Maybe I'll make a video on putting that cooler in. I don't know. I was actually surprised how well the video went over on the PC. See, the advantage for me to make videos on miscellaneous subjects is it brings in people that haven't seen my channel. Like for instance, there'll be PC folks that are, PC nerds, if you will, that will perhaps be musicians also, but they haven't seen my videos. And this brought them in or whatever, and now they're watching my other videos. So there's advantages for me to film things like this. Okay, so anyway, I have that cooler, so that's one thing I'm going to do. I'll give you a quick status of, this is the last hurrah guitar, and the only status change is that I put that ring around it on the inside. That's the reinforcement ring. And I do the ring like this versus the little individual strips that most manufacturers do. Most manufacturers just put a straight triangle brace around the hole, which is fine. It's going to be very protective, but I think this is more protective. I turn the grain 90 degrees from the other grain. In other words, the main grain in the top is going this way. This ring is cut out of a solid piece of wood, and I turn it 90 degrees so that the grain on it is going exactly opposite of all the grain in the top. And that way it's super strong. You couldn't break that hole out if you tried, I don't think. And of course, someone will try. Okay, let's see. I just thought this is kind of behind the scenes type information. When Caleb finishes an instrument, he always lays it on my table here, and then I go through it. Now, I have not even picked this up since he laid it there. So this is a Gibson guitar that he worked on. So if this is your guitar, here's the current status. I don't even know who it belongs to right now at the moment because I haven't had a chance to look at all the details. But I go through them with a fine-tooth comb, and I look and try to find something that I would do different or whatever. And for the most part, I don't find much. He Caleb knows what he's doing now, and he does a good job. And this one here, I know we had to take the whole back off of it, and I think we probably put a new bridge plate in it, and who knows what all we did to it. I can see just by looking at it, though, it's up in pretty good shape. It's got a little bit of a bow here still, but I think we flattened a lot of that out because I think it was really bad. I don't again, you could have thrown a couple of dogs under those strings, I think, when it first came in here. Overall, though, it looks pretty good. I have not looked at it. I promise you, this is the first moment I've picked it up and looked at it. So that's that. I do this on every instrument that we send out of here. I even do it on my own instruments. I mean, like ones that I've worked on. I'll stop and just take a minute and look at them and look them over really good. Okay, let's talk about some specialty tools. We've talked, most of these you have seen, I'm sure, at one point or time or another, but I don't think it hurts to go over them, and you'll hear it maybe a different way when I say something. I wasn't going to talk about finger planes this morning because I talk about them so much, but I saw somebody ask a question earlier, and it scrolled up the screen about which planes do I use and why. I personally like the smallest planes. Now, I'm sure they actually make them smaller than this. I think they go down to 8 millimeter. This is a 10 millimeter plane. I really like it the best. It's got a round bottom, and the reason I like it the best is you have the best control over it. It's a small cutting edge. You might think, well, why is that good? Well, a small cutting edge takes less force to push it. You get a great big wide, and it just takes out too much wood, and you got to push too hard, etc. This, because it's so small, you can go really fast, and you can cut a lot of stuff with this really quickly. So to me, this is the plane right here, the 10-inch. I absolutely use this to death, and I use it for everything. And because it's so small, you can get it into really tight places and use it a lot of times when nothing else will work. So, and then someone was saying about the hand plane or palm plane. Well, these are great. Don't get me wrong, they're wonderful. But for me, personally, they're way too big and too bulky, and the only thing they're really good for me, is roughing out. But they do save my fingers and even my thumb, because you can let it ride right here in the palm, and then you just, it pushes against the palm of your hand right here, and you can just, you get a lot of force and push really good, but it's just a roughing out plane in my opinion. I am sure there are plenty of people out there that could do very fine detail work with this. It's just not for me. I prefer the little one here for the detail work. This one here, blade-wise, it's probably a 10 also. Yeah, it's probably only a 10 also, but the foot on it's quite a bit bigger, as you can see. But for me, this is a rough out, this is the detail. I think it's partly because you get it in your fingers and you can really control that, and that's why I like this for the detail. Okay, let's talk about a few real specialty tools. This is a peg shaver. I have made a few of these over the years. To be honest, I don't think any of them I made were as good as this particular one. This brand here is a J-U-Z-E-K. That's all I can tell you. J-U-Z-E-K. Tools USA, it says. So there, if it'll focus on that, let you see it real close. That's the symbol and I like this one. This is a good one. The only thing I don't like about this is it's like left-handed threads. So you actually unscrew it to push this down, which is backwards. And pushing it down, pushing this part down tightens it. So you're actually unscrewing it to tighten it, which is just messes with your head, I don't like that. That's the one thing I don't like, but it just is what it is. So whoever made it that way for some reason. It doesn't make sense to me, but other than that, this is a very good one. Okay, this is a tool I've shown before, I know, but it's just a specialty tool, and you don't need this very often, but when you need it, it's really handy. And that is, this I made out of plastic. You could make this out of maple, you can make it out of aluminum, you can make it out of pretty much anything. I just used plastic because that's what I had. And this is just one of those old violin tuning keys that I don't like anyway, and I took them off and just used it here. And what this makes is a winch, basically. You can turn this and it spins this piece here. And and then you can see that that spinner is right below this hole. So what you can do is you can drill like a pinhole through your guitar, just a tiny, and when I say pinhole, I mean they make like wire drills. You can get the tiniest little drill that's just hardly bigger than a hair. You just need a hole that's just big enough to get your wire through. And I'm talking like a wire like the E string on a guitar, like a 10 or something like that. And you poke that down through the hole that you drill in the guitar, and you can tie a washer onto it or whatever. Like say you need to put a cleat someplace that's really in a hard place to get to, and you need a lot of pressure on it maybe to line things up. Maybe the top's not lined up good or something. Maybe the crack isn't. Well, anyway, you can run that wire down through your guitar all the way out the sound hole, put your cleat on, tie a washer on there, whatever. Then you can pull the wire back up through here, and then once you get it up tight, then you start cranking, and this will pull it up tighter than a bull's butt at flight time. It really is awesome, and it doesn't slip because it's a tuning key, and tuning keys just generally don't slip. So you can just tighten and tighten and tighten until you get it exactly where you want it. For me, when you need this thing is just invaluable. Magnets through the top and all that sort of kind of work. I mean, people use magnets all the time, and I'm not that big of a fan of the magnets, especially if you need a bunch of them, because they all start jumping together, and you can't put them that close together because they'll jump across, and so magnets to me are good and bad. But this, when you need this, and when you need to line something especially, or you really need a lot of force, there's nothing that beats this. Now, sure, you end up with a little tiny hole in your guitar, but that little tiny hole is so small that it's not of any consequence. In fact, even if you didn't fill it, you wouldn't probably see it. But you can fill it, of course, and then you never see it. Okay, so that's that. You can make that out of almost anything, as I said. Okay, this thing here, I should have got a piece. Well, I got a piece of fret wire laying right here. This is a tang nipper. The cutting business end is right here. You can see that little, it's like a guillotine, and you can see it go down and chop. I think I can get it in the camera there, get the light right. But you can see it just goes down and chops. And what it chops is the tang off the bottom of the fret here. The fret wire, trying to get that at the optimal distance you can see the bottom here has a tang on it. Well, when you have binding on both sides of your fretboard, you need to cut that tang off so that the top of the fret can extend out over the binding. And that's what this specialty tool is for. So you line it up in here, and well, let me give you a before. There you can see it, and the tang is still on it. Hopefully you can see that. But here's what it'll look like after you knock the tang off. Okay, so there, I think you can see that fairly clearly. The tang is missing there. So that's what those are for. Specialty tool. You only need that if you're, going to be doing a lot of fret jobs and you want your frets to extend out over the top of your binding. Okay, probably the one specialty tool that I've got more questions over than anything, and that's why I'm including it again, is because people still ask, what is this thing I use to check the string height? This is an invaluable tool. Until I found this, I found checking action to be cumbersome at best. You can use feeler gauges, but putting 2 or 3 feeler gauges together is not the most accurate way to do it. I mean, yeah, I know machinists do it. I know mechanics especially do that all the time. But, you got to realize how, the measurements you're going to in thousandths, it doesn't take anything to add a thousandth to your measurement, or 2 thousandths or 3 thousandths. So like say you stack 3 feeler gauges together and there's just dust particles between there. You've added a thousandth or 2 to your measurement. And if you're really trying to be precise, adding those little dust particles in there is not precise. So this is, you don't have to deal with that. You just slide this in. It's a taper gauge. You can see how it is cut on a taper. It goes to 10 thousandths right here, 10 thousandths of an inch, all the way up to 150 thousandths right here. And it's graduated. You can see the graduations on it. You can get this in metric too, I believe, but this is in thousandths, inches. And you just basically slide it through a slot, and it'll tell. And when you get to where it touches, then you know how many thousandths that slot is. Or in the case that I use it for, I slide it under the string, and I know how high the string is off the fret. Now, it takes a little bit of fidgeting to get it level on, when you're putting it in there. If you get it cocked one way or the other, so, you got to get used to using it, but you'd have to do that with a feeler gauge too. So anyway, the point is, that's what this is. It's called Insize, INSIZE. The number is 4630-1E. So that's what it is. Insize. You can get these. I get them off eBay generally, but you can, if you look around, you can find them. They're not cheap because they are a precision tool. So don't expect to get one for $5, $15, whatever. They're like $65. So, I mean, they're expensive. But when you do a lot of fret jobs, that's not an expensive tool at all when you do a lot of fret jobs. This is well worth the money. Okay, I got a couple of more specialty tools here. This one is a StewMac original. I tried to make a couple of these myself, and I'll be honest and just tell you that this is better than the ones I made. So, that's why I use this one. You say, what is it? Well, you can see there it's got a cutting edge, basically, and it's a steep wedge. You reach in through the sound hole and you grab the bridge plate and you pull the bridge plate off the guitar. And of course you use heat and different things like that to try to soften it up, but this will pull that bridge plate out. It's not easy. You can't just reach in there and just jerk a bridge plate out. It doesn't work like that. And you can break your top. You can do all kinds of damage to your instrument with this thing if you don't use it well. But it is the best tool for the job, at least that I found. I haven't found anything better than this, without taking the back off the instrument, of course. This is where the guitar is all together and you just want to replace the bridge plate. Reach in there and, if you heat this up and you heat up the bridge plate, of course, it's difficult to do. It's not simple, but this is the best tool for the job, I think. From StewMac. Okay, specialty clamp. This clamp here, I've often thought, boy, I ought to make one of these. I can make one of these a little bit bigger, make them a little bit better, etc. and so forth. This is a violin edge crack clamp. You got a crack, like maybe the top is separated. Tops are in two pieces, and maybe that seam down the middle has separated. Okay, and you want to push that seam back together maybe at the tailpiece area. Okay, so what you do is you tighten this down on one side of the crack, tighten this down on the other side of the crack, then you squeeze it together, and if you watch, you'll see these things coming together here, and you can see how close they're getting now. They're getting pretty close together, and then that pulls that crack tight together. So that's what it's for. It's a specialty tool for gluing cracks that are on the edge of your work. This is a small tool. It's made for violins. It works on guitars, and I would say you can go up to about a 1/4 inch thickness, and that's about the most you can go. I've actually thought about making one of these much bigger, just machining it in my machine shop over there. But honestly, I don't use it that much, and there's other ways you can handle the same problem. So for the few times I need to use it, this thing has worked really great. And when you really need it, it's the best tool for the job. Where did I get it? What brand is it? I think I bought it from International Luthier Supply out of Oklahoma about 30 years ago. And I don't even think they're in business anymore. They were a mom and pop shop, and for a while I think some of their family was trying to run it. I don't think they exist anymore, but they were the best instrument supply house in the country as far as I was concerned. It was a little mom and pop shop, but they sure did a good job and had the best tools. But anyway, I don't know where you can get one of these now. You just have to search. I guess you'd call it a violin edge clamp, something like that. I really don't know what it's called. And there's no name on it at all that I can see. Nothing stamped anywhere. So there you go. Here's a tool that some of you probably don't even know exists. Left-handed drill bits. You think, left-handed drill bits, is this a joke? No, it really is left-handed drill bits. I'm sure a lot of you know about that. But they turn backwards. And you think, why would I need a drill bit that turns backwards? Well, let me tell you why. They're very handy, and there are certain circumstances where this is the only thing that's going to work for you. We had one of those this week. You know, the Gibson guitars with the adjustable bridges that everybody hates, or at least I do. They've got that metal through the bridge and bridge plate. Well, one of those brass ferrules, I guess you'd call it, that has the screw down through where you screw your metal thing that adjusts the saddle up and down. Well, anyway, that particular ferrule was loose in there, but it wouldn't come out of the guitar, and the bolt on the inside was still in that ferrule, and there's nothing on top to hold on to. So when you try to loosen the bolt on the inside, that ferrule would spin, and there was just nothing you couldn't grab it with a pliers, you couldn't grab it with anything because it was flush with the top of the guitar. There was nothing you could grab a hold of it with. I tried to CA glue a screw down in that ferrule, and that didn't hold, just because that inside bolt was too tight and it would just break the CA glue bond. So I got out my left-handed drill bit, turned my drill in reverse, put it on that brass ferrule on the top of the guitar. I had Caleb hold a wrench on the nut on the inside, or the nut or the bolt or whatever it was on the inside. I think it was a nut. And anyway, I just spun the ferrule backwards, which will unthread the nut on the inside. And I used a left-handed drill bit to do that. And there was nothing else that was going to hold on to that. So if I didn't have these, we wouldn't have got that out of there without doing a lot of damage to the guitar. I mean, we could have just forcefully drove it out of there, but that wouldn't have been pretty. This did the job, and it did unscrew that ferrule. So left-handed drill bits are good for things like that. What most mechanics and most machinists use left-handed drill bits for is to actually fix broken bolts and things that break off inside of an engine block, or just any place where a bolt breaks off. You can take the left-handed screw and a left-handed drill and start working on the end of that broken off screw, and oftentimes it will unscrew it itself. And if it doesn't, then the worst case scenario is you have a hole there still, and you can then put an easy out in there and get it out. But often this will just do the job all by itself. So get you some of these if you do a lot of that kind of work. Okay, the last thing I've got here on the table is boiled linseed oil. I saw a question scroll up the screen earlier that said, do I still use boiled linseed oil, or do I only use the Be Good oil? No, I still use the boiled linseed oil. You know, the boiled linseed oil has a real good, I think what I like to use it for the best is to kind of rejuvenate an old finish. If you have like an old violin and the finish is just kind of chewed up and just looks nasty, if you just wipe it down with the boiled linseed oil and then wipe it back off and dry it, completely dry, you'll be amazed how much better it looks. It just changes the look of the old finish. So I do still use boiled linseed oil. For the fretboards, I kind of prefer the Be Good oil now, but this is really, really good too. I mean, I would have no problem still using this on the fretboards. So either way, either one of those products is really good for bare wood, but this is really good for rejuvenating finishes. Okay, I think that covers all the things I wanted to cover over here. I wanted to go ahead and just give you a look at the 12 string again, just because, and give you a status of the 12 string. Like I said, we've had trouble contacting the fellow that originally ordered it. His name was McCausland out of Scotland, and still have not got a hold of him. Don't know what happened to him. He paid a large deposit for this, so I'm sure he was very interested, and he did keep in touch with us for the longest time on the build, but we don't know where he's at now. I'm real happy overall with the guitar. The finish on it's really pretty darn good. The pores finally filled. There's still a few little places where the pores are not full. And you know what? I noticed on a real nice Martin guitar, there was a place or two on it where the pores weren't full. So I don't feel too bad. I think I'm in pretty good company. Here's the sound, and I haven't tuned it in a while, so who knows what it's going to sound like. Not bad. The sustain is amazing on this, and that's partly the Padauk. Just amazing. Just really amazing sustain. And partly the Padauk, partly that heavy peg head helps. The heavy neck helps on sustain too. But overall, you know, if I, stepping back now and looking at it and going, what would I have done different? I can't think of much. Honestly, I'm pretty darn happy with this thing. It really turned out really, really nice. The piece of wood on the top is just gorgeous. It's got the medullary rays through the top. You can see them here all through it. That's how you can tell, by the way, if you have a really good top board, if it's perfectly quarter sawn, it will have those rays going through it this way. I call it checking myself. It's just kind of like, it's just little checks in the wood type of thing, but it goes across the grain. The grain runs this way, but those little rays go opposite of that. And so anytime you're buying a guitar, be sure, to look for that, because that's a really good indication that you've got a good piece of wood. And of course, while we're talking about checking a guitar out for buying it, look around the sound hole and see if the grain goes all the way through, or if you see lateral or horizontal rings, then you know you're dealing with plywood or laminated wood. A lot of people like to call it laminated because it sounds better, but it's basically plywood. That's what it is. You can call it whatever you want to, but plywood is plywood in my book. So you can tell that way by looking at that. That's one way you can tell whether the top is solid or plywood. The back, the best way to tell on that is to look inside, pick out a very specific grain, and then turn it over and see if you see that same grain. If it's totally different, then you're dealing with plywood, because it's going to look very similar. It may not be exactly the same, but it's going to look very similar. I'm not a 12-string player, but I play one on YouTube. And so now the obvious question is, what are we going to do with this? Well, there was several people absolutely said, no matter what, I will pay the exact price you want for it, if you can't find the original owner. I'm going to give the original owner some time, because who knows what could have happened in this crazy last year that we've had. I'm going to hang on to it. And in fact, this is only I think the third 12-string I've built. And I've always wanted to keep one. And in fact, I think the second 12-string I built, I offered to give the lady $500 cash to just back out of the deal. In other words, not take the guitar, and I'd give her $500 to not take the guitar, and she wouldn't do it. So I didn't get to keep that one. So this one here, in my opinion, is even better than that one. So I'm probably just going to keep it and hand it down in my family if the original owner doesn't come back to claim it. So that's where we are right now. I have already promised it to another fellow if I decide to sell it. So it's pretty much already sold one way or the other. But right at the moment, I think I'm just going to keep it. I absolutely love it. It's just gorgeous, and it's just a killer guitar. So there you go. Let's see. Okay, we're about to close this out here. I don't even know what time it is. Probably already past time. It looks like we won't have much time for questions and answers. Maybe one question. If you could help me in sharing these videos, I would really appreciate it. Put it on your social media, that kind of thing. Send people to the shop talks. I think there's a lot of good tips there. We did pass our 200 mark again, but we haven't made our 300 in quite a long time. Let's see. I am still planning to do an in-depth video on stringing. I just can't find the time. We had problems with the internet this morning, and I just wanted to let you know that right now I'm in the middle of haying out there. Since I got back from Mountain View, I cut hay, we've raked the hay, and then we started having baler problems. And I even went out and bought a different old baler, and it's got problems too. And I'm just not having fun right now. So as soon as I get off of here, I'm out there to the baler. That's where I'm at. So I can't even work on instruments. Here's a bunch of questions, so let's see what we got. Have I ever played a ukulele? Not much, just very minimal. And at one time, I actually knew the chords and stuff, but I don't remember them anymore. Yeah, I don't know a lot about ukuleles, so I'm not really going to comment much about that. Scarf joint has separated at the heel, crack extremely tight, can't even start a razor blade in it. Could CA glue hold it? Well, I always believe in doing the easy thing first, Eris, so I would give that a shot, I guess. But you might, if it's wood on wood, I think I'd try to get Tite Bond in there somehow, like wet it down, wiggle it back and forth, see if you can get the Tite Bond in there. I mean, if it's just too tight of a crack, then sure, the CA glue. But if you can get the Tite Bond in there, you're probably better off. And maybe even take an air hose and blow the Tite Bond back in there. I mean, if you think that'll work. Otherwise, the CA glue is probably a better option. I always believe do the simple thing first. You can always go to the complicated thing. So that's the way I look at it. My buddy at Minimum Guitars, do you have an opinion on wipe-on poly? Yeah, I kind of do. Actually, you hit on the third varnish that I've actually tried is the poly. You know, it sounded fine to be truthful, but I'm just not sold on it. Poly just doesn't get hard enough for me, so in the big picture, I don't think it's the best finish. Polyurethane is, I mean, it's a great finish for, you know, lots of stuff. I just don't think it's your best finish for an instrument. I want a hard, crisp finish. And then I want to put good paste wax on that to even make it harder and crisper. It just helps the sound. It really does. Are you still building a resonator guitar? Eventually, Larry, if I ever find 5 minutes, I guarantee I'm going to build one. I just seriously can't find enough time to, it's just amazing. I don't even know how I get done what I get done. Nut width on the 12 string. I don't know what it is. I just build it by the plans. And honestly, I didn't make it much bigger than a normal 6 string. So it's a little tight. It is a little bigger. Let me just quickly measure it with the calipers here, and it'll tell me what it is. Actually, that's in millimeters at the moment, which I'm sure some of you would prefer. But let me just see if I can give you an idea. The overall nut width is 1 inch 829 thousandths, but the strings are set slightly inside of that. So 1 inch 829 thousandths is the actual nut width. Now let me just tell you what the string width is. Okay, the string width is 1 inch 674 thousandths, so if that helps you. I mean, it's wider than, you know, a normal guitar, but not a whole lot wider. It's just a little bit wider. So I got that. Let's see, here's one more question. How deep is the dish on a mandolin when you roll the marble around? I don't go real super deep like a lot of builders do. I don't think that's productive. I think that's counterproductive when you get it too deep. I like to just have a nice, smooth underbow there, you know, or whatever you want to call that, a trough around the perimeter. I want it to flow, you know, just kind of flow. If you got it real deep and back up, I think you're counterproductive there. I don't think you're going to get as good a vibration. So I don't have a depth for you. It's just an eye thing that I do, and it's not super deep though. Looking to see, is there any more questions? I don't see any at the moment, so I guess I'm going to go work on an old hay baler. Man, I'm telling you, like I mentioned in the comments before I had to restart. This is our second restarting of this morning, by the way. But anyway, I mentioned in the comments earlier that you haven't worked on a mechanical device in your whole life. You haven't worked on one unless you've worked on an old hay baler. Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable how complicated those things are. On the knotter assembly, and the knotter assembly has all these gears and these wheels, and things rotate really fast, and these needles come up through, and it all ties a knot on both sides of the bale in about 1/2 of a second. I mean, it just all happens and rotates, and it just does it like that. And you go, why didn't it work? You can't tell, because there's like 10 or 15 moving parts over here, 10 or 15 moving parts over here, and it all rotates, and these oh my gosh. And when it doesn't tie, your life is miserable, and my life is miserable right now, and especially when it's 102 in the shade out there. So wish me luck. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I see Doug Santaniello. Yeah, that's narrow for a 12 string. Okay, well, good. I think it is. I didn't really, I don't always measure stuff like everybody else does. I just kind of go by what feels good and go with it, Yeah, measuring is very important on some things, but not on everything. So, there you go.